we are going to be going over input statements. Now, input statements are basically where you can put data from the user into the code. Well, they're one way, but what they do is they ask the user for information so that it can be used later in the code. So you might be thinking, but where does that happen in real life? Well, it actually happens a lot. Whenever you open a new app and it asks you for your birthday or your email address, that is an input statement because you, the user, are entering your data into the app. Now, let's talk about how we write them. So in Python, you can make an input statement really easily. It's just like a print statement. You just write input, input, and then add some parentheses. And then if you want the user to be asked like a question, because when you run the input just like that, there isn't an orange arrow. It has that. It just has the white cursor. Let's say the user miraculously understands what to do here and they type in something like this. And after they press enter, the program ends. Now, even though that's cool that you can actually get your words into the code, it would be a lot cooler if you were answering a question or if the program did something with your input. So, the first thing we're gonna talk about is how to actually have like a question in there. And you do that by just making a string inside the input function. And you can type something like, what is your favorite ice cream flavor? And now we have that question. Let's say I like chocolate. You can see here, however, that there is no space in between my answer and the question mark, which is really similar to something we discussed during string concatenation. Python, computers aren't as smart on their own as we give them credit to be. So we have to manually add in a space right here if we want there to be a space here. Let's say I like strawberry. Now, as you can see, it's a lot cleaner. But we still haven't done anything using this input because there's no way to access this input statement right now. But we can change this really easily by just connecting the input statement to a variable, like ice cream preference. Yes, I'm aware that this is getting messy. So you have the variable name, the equal sign, and the value, which is input. What is your favorite ice cream flavor? Right now, nothing's actually changed in what the user sees, but what you can do is you can print ice cream preference and let's say my favorite flavor is caramel now. Now, the console spits out exactly what you typed in. since Python is set to gathering data in string form, so it pretty much just treats it like printing a regular variable or string. As we said before, Python gets this variable. It's like, okay, it's whatever the string is. It can literally be anything as long as it's a string. And Python will accept it because we didn't specify the type of this input anywhere. And then now that we have this variable, we can use it to actually like make a little message. And what I'm going to do is I'm just gonna concatenate something like my favorite flavor is a little space. I like to leave my spaces inside when I'm doing regular string concatenation, but you could always just do this space separately as well. And then I'm gonna add a little something after too. And now when I put in my favorite ice cream flavor, that's vanilla, I get my favorite flavor is vanilla too. So now we can actually print out something using our computer with data that was sent in by the user. And it can literally be anything, like lettuce. And it works. And we're not going to go too far into giving our computer feelings, because that's a whole nother thing completely. But yeah, we have an ice cream preference. Now, we can also get data from users as something that isn't a string. Let's say I want to get someone's birth year. Don't ask why. And what I would do is I would just write my input statement as usual. What year were you born in? And I would put the entire input statement inside an int function. So I would close both sides in parentheses, and this would gather the data as an integer and not as a string. So now if I go ahead and type 1990, I would just end the program. But if I write something like Alabama, I would get an error, a value error, because you can't convert a string, like an actual word with letters in it, to a number. So you would get a value error. There are ways you can actually like accept these errors, but we're not going to talk about that yet. So for now, the best we can do is just leave it like this and hope that the user doesn't fill it in wrong, or else they're going to get awarded with some not very subtle text. But yeah, let's say I was born in the year 400. Why not? And yeah, that is how you can collect data types. Oh, wait, let's try it with a float. What's a float piece of data? Their heights. How tall are, height in centimeters, because I don't know about you guys, but my height in centimeter is a decimal. So I would basically just do the same exact thing as I did with the int input statement. How tall are you in centimeters? We'll just leave it to them to figure it out too. Let's say I'm 167.1 centimeters. It accepts it. Let's say I do 160 centimeters. It accepts it because, since it's a float, any number is fine. So even if it doesn't have a decimal point after it, what this does is that it basically just slaps a decimal point to the end of it. Because if it's a number and you're using a float as your conversion thing, then you're absolutely fine. But if I do like a bunch of letters, that's when I get an error. So that is an input statement in Python and how to use them.